The night reeked of smoke and iron. Alpha Rian Vale rode at the head of his warriors, snow spraying up from the hooves of their mounts as they crossed the border of the Bloodfang territory. The moon hung low and red, a bad omen. But Rian didn't believe in omens anymore. Only power. "Hold formation," he said quietly, voice carrying even through the wind. His beta, Yarok, nodded and raised his fist. 50 wolves shifted soundlessly behind them, their breath fogging in the cold. They reached the outer wall of the enemy compound, an old fortress of black stone and rusted bars. Rumor said it was used to keep Omega slaves. Rian had seen enough prisons to know that rumors like that were usually true. He dismounted and drew his blade. "No survivors," he ordered, then hesitated. "Except the captives. If there are any." Yarok frowned. "You really think there's anyone left alive in there?" Rian didn't answer. His wolf stirred beneath his skin for the first time in months, restless. "Something's inside." He pushed the gate open. The hinges screamed. A wave of rot hit him. Blood, urine, and despair mixed into the kind of stench only death could leave behind. The kennels were a row of iron cages stacked 2, sometimes 3 high. Inside, bodies huddled together, thin as shadows. Some looked up at the sound of boots. Others didn't move at all. "They treated them worse than animals," Yarok muttered. "Animals fight back," Rian said flatly. He moved between the cages, scanning each broken figure. None met his gaze. Most were too far gone, starved, beaten, spirit burned away. His heart clenched, not out of pity, but because something in him recognized the emptiness. Then he stopped. Third cage from the end. Someone sat perfectly still, knees drawn up, hair hanging like a curtain over her face. She wasn't watching him. She wasn't begging. She simply waited. Rian's pulse quickened. His wolf shifted beneath his skin, restless. "Open it," he ordered. Yarok hesitated. "She's barely breathing. Maybe dead." "Do it." The lock clicked. Rian crouched beside the cage. The girl didn't move, not even when he spoke. "Look at me." "Nothing." "I said look at me." Her head twitched slightly, just enough for him to glimpse her eyes through the tangle of hair. They were pale, almost colorless, but alive. Not afraid. Not submissive. Just empty. "She deaf?" Yarok asked. "No," Rian said quietly. "She's ignoring me." That shouldn't have been possible. Alphas exuded dominance by nature. Even feral wolves felt it. Yet this girl sat as if his power meant nothing. He reached through the bars and touched her wrist. The world tilted. A shock ripped through him, hot, electric, primal. His chest burned, and his vision flickered gold. The howl of his wolf, silent for years, tore through his skull. He stumbled back, gasping. "Alpha!" Yarok caught his shoulder. "What happened?" Rian stared at the girl. She hadn't moved, but her gaze was locked on him now. For one heartbeat, he could swear he heard her voice. Not aloud, but in his mind. "Whispermane." He blinked, and the moment was gone. "Take her," he said hoarsely. "We're done here." His men exchanged looks but obeyed. The girl, tiny, weightless, was wrapped in a cloak and lifted into an enforcer's arms. As they left the burning fortress behind, Rian couldn't stop glancing at her. He'd found hundreds of prisoners in his life. None had ever made his wolf wake. He didn't even know her name. The storm hit halfway home. The convoy of jeeps and trucks tore through the snowdrifts, their headlights cutting through sheets of white. Inside the lead vehicle, Rian sat in silence, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Yarok drove. "You felt it, didn't you?" Rian didn't respond. "The bond," Yarok pressed. "I saw the look on your face. You went pale as ash." "Drop it." Yarok snorted. "You haven't felt your wolf in years. Now one touch from a half-dead Omega and you're glowing gold. You really expect me to pretend that's normal?" Rian's fingers curled into fists. "Whatever she is, she's not normal." The girl stirred in the back seat. wrapped in his heavy cloak. For a second, Rian thought she might wake, but she only shifted closer to the heat vent, still unconscious. Her breathing was steady, soft. The sound crawled under his skin. When they reached Frosthold Fortress, the massive gates opened without a word. Warriors lined the walls, heads bowed as their alpha passed. Rian stepped out into the freezing air and gestured for the enforcers. "South wing," he said. "Room with windows, fire lit. Healer on standby. No visitors." "Understood," Yarrick said, though he added quietly. "You're bringing trouble into our walls." Rian's golden eyes flashed. "If anyone whispers about her, I'll rip out the tongue that started it." The pack said nothing more. She woke 3 days later. The first thing she saw was light, gray dawn spilling through high windows. The second was the man sitting in the corner, half in shadow, watching her with eyes like molten gold. Rian Vale. He hadn't left the room since they brought her in. The healers came and went, but he stayed. "You're awake," he said. His voice was low, rough from disuse. She didn't answer. He leaned forward, forearms on his knees. "You know where you are." A flicker of confusion crossed her face. Her throat moved as if she tried to speak, but no sound came out. Rian's jaw tightened. "The healers said your voice wasn't damaged." Still silence. He sighed and rose from the chair, pacing the length of the room. "You're not a prisoner here. Not anymore. You were found in the Bloodfang Kennels. Do you remember that?" Her eyes flicked to him, quick and sharp. He caught it. "Yes," he murmured. "You remember." He stopped at the window, staring out at the snow. "What's your name?" "Nothing." He turned. "You must have one." Her lips parted, then closed. "Right," he muttered. "You can't or won't speak." He walked back to her bedside, close enough to feel the faint warmth of her breath. "You don't have a mark. No collar, no tattoo. The others did. Why not you?" Her gaze dropped to the blanket. "You're not like them," he said softly. "You're something else." The words came out before he could stop them, and the truth of them made his wolf stir again. Later he found her sitting up, eyes scanning the room as if memorizing every corner. She was small, almost fragile, but there was nothing weak about the way she looked at the world. Alert, assessing, ready to vanish if threatened. Rian sat down across from her and set a small slate and a stick of chalk on the table between them. "Write it," he said. She looked at the slate, then at him. "Your name," he explained. "If you can't speak, right." Her hand trembled as she picked up the chalk. After a long pause, she wrote a single word in shaky letters. Rian stared at it. "That's what they called you." She gave a tiny nod. "Well, Ash," he said quietly, "you're safe now. No one here will hurt you." She tilted her head as if trying to decide whether to believe him. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I don't know what happened to you in that place, but I won't let it happen again." Her eyes flicked up to his, pale silver against gold. For a heartbeat, the room went still. Then she looked away. Rian sat back, exhaling slowly. His wolf paced inside him, restless, whispering words he didn't want to hear. "Well, Ash," he said quietly, "you're safe now. No one here will hurt you." She tilted her head as if trying to decide whether to believe him. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I don't know what happened to you in that place, but I won't let it happen again." Her eyes flicked up to his, pale silver against gold. For a heartbeat, the room went still. Then she looked away. Rian sat back, exhaling slowly. His wolf paced inside him, restless, whispering words he didn't want to hear. That night, he dreamed of cages. He woke to a scream, not loud but sharp enough to slice through his chest. It was coming from the south wing. Rian ran. He burst into her room to find her thrashing on the bed, silent but wild, hands clawing at her throat. The healer stood frozen in the doorway, afraid to touch her. "Out!" Rian ordered. He crossed to the bed and caught her wrists. "Ash! Look at me!" She didn't hear him. Her eyes were wide, pupils blown, trapped somewhere far away. He loosened his grip and pressed his hand against her cheek instead. "Breathe," he said softly. "You're safe. You're not there anymore." Her body jerked once, twice. Then her fingers twitched toward his. She touched his skin, and the world steadied. The tremors stopped. Her eyes fluttered closed. He stayed there for a long time, holding her hand until dawn crept through the window. When she woke again, he was gone, but a bowl of food and a folded cloak waited on the table. She touched the cloak first. Smelled like pine and cold iron. His scent. For reasons she couldn't explain, it made her chest ache. She wasn't supposed to feel anything anymore. Feelings got you killed in the kennels. But when she closed her eyes, she saw flashes. Golden eyes, a voice that said breathe, a touch that didn't hurt. She didn't know what to do with that. Rian returned that evening. She was sitting on the floor near the window, knees drawn up under his cloak. "Do you remember what happened last night?" he asked. No answer. "You screamed." Her shoulders stiffened. He crouched down to her level. "Was it a memory?" She nodded once. Rian rubbed the back of his neck. He wasn't good at gentle things. His life had been war, discipline, survival. But something about this girl broke through the armor he'd built. "Do you want me to stay here tonight?" he asked quietly. Her eyes flicked up, wary but not afraid. After a pause, she nodded. "All right," he said. He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. "I'll stay." Hours passed. Neither spoke. The only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the soft rhythm of her breathing. Sometime before dawn, she whispered, a faint rasp that barely carried across the space. "Why?" Rian lifted his head. "Why what?" Her lips moved again. "Why help?" He stared at her, startled. It was the first word he'd heard from her. He thought carefully before answering. "Because no one helped me when I needed it." She studied him for a long time, then closed her eyes and lay down again. Rian watched her until sleep pulled him under too. His wolf finally quiet. In the morning, Yarrick found him still in the chair, cloak draped over both of them. "You're getting attached," Yarrick said softly. Rian didn't open his eyes. "Maybe. She's not one of us." "I know." "Then what is she?" Rian opened his eyes and looked toward the sleeping figure on the bed. The faintest glow shimmered at her throat, like light beneath skin. "I don't know," he said. "But whatever she is, she woke something I thought was dead." Yarrick frowned. "Your wolf." Rian nodded once. "Then the bond's real." Rian's gaze lingered on her. "It shouldn't be. But it is." From her bed, Ash pretended to sleep. She had heard everything. And though she didn't understand what the word bond truly meant, she understood one thing clearly. For the first time in her life, someone had called her something. Not property. Not filth. Something worth fighting for. She pressed her hand to her throat, feeling the faint thrum beneath her skin. Pulsed once, twice like a second heartbeat. And for the first time she was afraid of hope. Snow never stopped falling over Frosthold. Yet inside its walls heat pulsed like a living thing. Iron braziers burned in every corridor. Wolves liked warmth when the world froze around them. Rian Vale moved through the halls without sound, his long coat brushing the stone. Every head bowed as he passed. Word had spread fast. The Alpha had brought home a silent stranger. He hated gossip, but he understood it. His pack had lived too long on the edge of war. Anything unknown felt like danger. Still, when he reached the door to the south wing, his heartbeat quickened. Inside, the girl Ash sat by the fire. She'd wrapped herself in his cloak again, sleeves falling past her fingers. The healer had coaxed her into eating broth, though she refused cooked meat. Now she held a cup in both hands, staring at the flames as if they might speak back. Rian paused in the doorway. "Why does she look like she's listening to something I can't hear?" She noticed him and stiffened. No flinch this time, only awareness. "Good," he murmured. "You're stronger today." He took the chair opposite her, leaving the fire between them. You slept through most of yesterday. She gave a tiny nod. You'll need strength if you're to stay here. My people. He stopped, choosing the right words. They don't welcome outsiders easily. Ash looked up, confusion flickering behind her pale eyes. She pointed to herself, then to the door, as if to ask leave. No, he said quickly. You're safe. I just need them to see that. She tilted her head. Her expression, half suspicion, half disbelief, almost made him smile. Almost. Yarrick entered then, carrying a tray. Alpha. Food. Rian waved him closer. Set it down. The beta obeyed, but his gaze lingered on Ash. She still hasn't spoken. Rian's voice cooled. No. She could be dangerous. Ash's eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance breaking through her stillness. Rian felt it too, an electric shift in the air. His wolf stirred again, low growl curling under his ribs. She's not a threat, Rian said quietly. Unless someone makes her one. Yarrick dropped his eyes and backed out. When the door closed, silence returned, heavy but not empty. Rian picked up a slice of bread and tore it in half. He offered one piece across the fire. Eat. After a long hesitation, she reached out and took it. Her fingers brushed his for a heartbeat, cool skin against heat, and the bond snapped awake like lightning. His wolf surged forward, and he had to bite the inside of his cheek to keep control. She felt it too. Her breath hitched. The crumbs slipped from her hand. Rian forced his voice calm. You feel it, don't you? She didn't answer, but her pulse jumped at her throat. It's all right, he said softly. It won't hurt you. He rose and walked to the window, staring at the snow beyond the glass. Won't hurt you, he thought, but it might destroy me. That night, Frosthold hummed with whispers. Warriors passing the hall paused to glance toward the south wing. Who is she? Why does she smell like the Alpha's scent? Maybe a new Luna. The last comment made Rian's jaw clench when he overheard it. He didn't correct them, but he didn't confirm it either. At midnight, he went to the training yard, needing space to breathe. He stripped to his shirt and swung his sword at the wooden posts until sweat ran down his back. Still, the image of her eyes haunted him. Calm, unflinching, impossibly old for someone so young. He'd lost faith in the mate bond long ago. His wolf had gone silent after the border wars, when half his pack died and the other half learned to fear him. Now, with one broken girl, the bond had returned like a storm. What are you, Ash? He whispered to the dark. Ash couldn't sleep. The fire had died down to embers. She lay staring at the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the stone. Every creak of the fortress sounded like footsteps from her past. But there was a difference here. No chains, no whips, no commands. Only quiet. She turned her head and saw the slate Rian had left on the table. The chalk rested beside it. After a moment's thought, she reached for it. She wrote a word slowly, letters uneven, why. Then another beneath it, me. The question filled the room though no voice carried it. She didn't know why he'd saved her. No one ever saved Omegas from the Kennels. Alphas used them, sold them, forgot them. But this one looked at her as if she were something dangerous and precious at once. She wiped the slate clean and lay back down, the faint scent of pine and metal clinging to his cloak. It made her feel, for the first time in years, less like nothing. Morning came with sunlight sharp as glass. Rian entered quietly and found her awake, sitting cross-legged on the rug, sketching circles on the slate. You draw, he asked. A shrug. Can I see? She hesitated, then held it up. It wasn't a picture, just a spiral, lines looping inward until they vanished at the center. Rian frowned. What is it? She touched her throat, then the slate, then drew another smaller circle inside the first. Trapped inside, he realized. That's how she feels. Something cold settled in his chest. I'll find a way to undo that, he said. Whatever they did to you. Her eyes widened slightly, a hint of hope and fear. She shook her head. You don't believe me. No response. He knelt beside her. Then I'll prove it. For a moment they just stared at each other. Two wounded creatures caught between fire and ice. Then Rian stood, voice rough. Rest today. Tomorrow you walk the halls. My people should see you're alive. The next day dawned bright but bitter. Frosthold glittered under the sun, its towers like shards of crystal. Rian waited at the courtyard entrance, gloved hands behind his back. Ash emerged slowly, cloaked in grey wool. She paused at the threshold, blinking at the light as though she'd forgotten what open air felt like. Stay close, Rian said. Some of them will stare. Ignore it. She nodded once and followed him across the yard. Warriors sparring with wooden staffs halted mid-swing. Healers whispering near the fountain went silent. Everywhere she looked, eyes watched her. Not cruel but curious, uncertain. Rian stopped beside the training ring. This is your home now, he said. If anyone touches you without your consent, they answer to me. That last part carried enough authority to make the nearest guards look away instantly. Ash's gaze drifted to the snow beyond the walls. The wind carried scents, iron, pine, wild freedom. She inhaled deeply, the first unbroken breath of her life. Her lips parted slightly, and Rian caught the faintest spark of awe. He almost smiled. Better than a cage, isn't it? She looked at him, eyes softening. Then she nodded. They walked the perimeter until she tired. Rian guided her back to the south wing, keeping pace with her small steps. Near the door she stopped and tugged at his sleeve. He turned. What is it? She pointed toward the slate he carried under his arm, a habit he'd developed for communication between them. He handed it to her. She wrote quickly, chalk scratching loud in the quiet hall. Thank you. Rian blinked. For what? She gestured around. Then added name. Ash, he asked. She nodded once. Then, to his surprise, erased the word and wrote another beside it. Still yours? The question hit him harder than any blade. He took the slate gently from her hands and set it aside. No, he said. Not mine. Not anyone's. But under my protection. Her brows drew together, uncertain. He tried again, softer. I can't own what I was meant to guard. Something unreadable passed over her face. Something like relief mixed with sorrow. She turned away and walked into her room, closing the door behind her. Rian stood in the corridor for a long time, staring at the grain of the wood where she'd vanished. His wolf whispered again, low and insistent. Liar. She's already yours. That evening, a storm rolled over Frosthold. Wind howled through the pines, and the fortress groaned as if the mountains themselves were alive. Rian paced his study, unable to focus on the reports before him. Every sound made him think of her. Every heartbeat echoed her silence. He poured himself a drink and finally gave up pretending he could ignore it. When he reached her room, the fire had burned low. Ash sat on the floor by the window, knees drawn to her chest. She turned as he entered, eyes catching the flicker of the lamp in his hand. Can't sleep, he asked. She shook her head. Storm bothering you? A pause, then a slight nod. He set the lamp down and sat on the edge of the rug. When I was young, storms meant safety. The louder the wind, the less chance our enemies could sneak close. She tilted her head, listening. He smiled faintly. Guess that's why I like them now. Reminds me that chaos can be protection. She studied his face as if trying to decide whether to believe that. Then she picked up the slate and wrote, Not afraid of noise. Afraid of quiet. He looked at the words, understanding blooming slow and painful. Because quiet meant pain. She didn't answer, but he saw the truth in her eyes. He reached out, stopped himself halfway, and dropped his hand to his knee instead. You're safe here, he said again, more a promise to himself than to her. Her gaze softened. She erased the words and wrote another line. Then you rest too. Rian huffed a quiet laugh. That an order? She nodded. Fine. But only because my Luna commands it. She frowned at the unfamiliar term. It means leader's mate, he explained quickly. Don't worry. It was a joke. Her expression didn't change, but her shoulders relaxed slightly, and he took it as a victory. They sat in silence until the wind outside calmed. When she finally lay down, he stayed until her breathing evened. On the table beside her, the slate still glimmered with a faint trace of chalk. 2 words remained half erased. Safe here. He whispered to the sleeping room. I'll make sure of it. At dawn, he was called to the council chamber. The elders waited, 5 gray-haired wolves in ceremonial robes. The eldest spoke first. We hear rumors, Alpha Vale, that you've brought a feral Omega into Frosthold. I brought a survivor, Rian corrected. A risk, another countered. Unmarked, unproven, possibly cursed. Rian's patience thinned. She's under my protection. That should be enough. Protection is one thing. Attachment is another. The elder leaned forward. You've already changed since her arrival. The pack senses it. Your control wavers. Rian met his gaze evenly. Maybe that's a good thing. When he left the chamber, the storm clouds had cleared. In the courtyard below, Ash stood in the sunlight, feeding bits of bread to a raven perched on the wall. She looked alive. And for the first time in years, Rian felt something close to peace. Later that day, he found her in the garden. She had gathered herbs, lavender, mint, a sprig of wolfsbane, and was arranging them by color. When he approached, she looked up, eyes bright in the fading light. You know plants? He asked. She nodded. Were you taught? Another nod. He crouched beside her. Healing herbs. She hesitated, then pointed to the wolfsbane and traced a line across her wrist. A silent warning. Poison. Rian exhaled slowly. You know more than I thought. She wrote on the soil with a stick. They made me learn. Then added for them. Then learn for yourself now, he said. For us. Her lips parted, and for a heartbeat he thought she might speak. Instead she smiled, a small, fragile curve of her mouth that caught the last of the sunlight and made it feel like summer. Rian stared at her, struck by the quiet power in that moment. The girl who had once been nothing was beginning to live again. And somewhere deep inside, his wolf whispered the same word over and over, steady as a drumbeat. Mate. Frosthold slept under a thin layer of mist that morning. The world looked calm, but Rian Vale had not slept at all. He had spent the night at his desk, surrounded by untouched reports. Every time he tried to read, his eyes strayed toward the south wing. When the scream came, it wasn't a sound at first. It was a pulse that hit the air like thunder without noise. His wolf jolted awake inside him. He was running before thought could catch up. The door to Ash's room slammed open. She was on the floor, half tangled in her blanket, eyes wide and white. Her hands clawed at invisible chains, mouth open in a voiceless cry. The fire had gone out, and the cold mist had seeped inside, turning her breath to fog. Ash! Rian crouched beside her, palms open. It's me. You're safe. She didn't see him. The look in her eyes was somewhere far away, back in the cages perhaps where daylight had never reached. Rian reached forward carefully, catching her wrists. She fought him with surprising strength. Her fingers were icy, her skin slick with sweat. Breathe, he said again, more a command than comfort. You're not there anymore. Look at me. He didn't know if she heard the words or the tone, but her gaze finally flicked toward him. For 1 second the air between them cracked, sharp, electric, and the bond hit like lightning through his chest. His wolf roared. Her body stilled. The invisible chains seemed to break. She sagged against him, shaking but alive. Rian eased her back to the bed, tucking the blanket around her. He stayed until her breathing slowed, until the trembling stopped. Then, still holding her hand, he whispered, "You're safe here. I swear it." When she woke, it was late afternoon. The light through the window was soft and gold. Rian was still there, sitting in the chair with his head bowed. For the first time she could study him without fear. The Alpha looked different in sleep. Younger. The harsh lines of command faded from his face, replaced by exhaustion. His hand rested near hers, fingers scarred from years of fighting. Ash watched him for a long time. Something inside her chest loosened, something that had been clenched for too many years. She sat up quietly, trying not to wake him, and reached for the slate on the bedside table. Her hand shook a little as she wrote. "Hurry." The chalk squeaked. Rian stirred, golden eyes snapping open instantly. He looked at her, then at the word. "Sorry," he said softly. "For what?" She hesitated, then pointed to the floor, to the broken lamp, the spilled water. He smiled faintly. "That. Lamps break. You don't." She blinked, startled by the gentleness. No one had ever spoken to her like that. He stood, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders. "I'll have the healer bring something to help you sleep tonight. Not strong, just enough to quiet your mind." Ash shook her head quickly. "No medicine." She shook it again, harder this time, fear flashing through her eyes. "All right," he said at once. "No medicine. Nothing you don't choose." Her breath steadied. Rian noted it silently. "Doesn't trust healers. They must have used drugs on her before." "Then we'll find another way," he said. "Maybe stories. Or music." Her brow furrowed. She didn't understand the word. He smiled. "I'll show you later." That evening, he returned carrying a small wooden box. Inside lay a simple flute carved from dark ash wood. "My mother used to play," he said, sitting by the fire. "Not well, but enough to keep nightmares away." He lifted it to his lips and played a few slow notes. Nothing fancy, just a low, steady melody. The sound filled the room like a warm wind. Ash watched, her body gradually relaxing, eyelids drooping. When the tune ended, she wrote on the slate more. Rian chuckled quietly and played again. By the time the second melody faded, she was asleep. He set the flute aside and pulled the blanket higher around her shoulders. As he left the room, Yarok waited in the hallway. "Heard the music," the beta said. "You serenading her now?" "Keeping her calm," Rian replied. Yarok frowned. "Alpha, you're getting too close." Rian turned, voice low. "If you saw what they did to her, you'd understand." "Maybe. But bonds like that, they don't just fade. If it's real, it'll claim you both." Rian didn't answer. He already knew Yarok was right. The next week passed quietly. Ash began to move more freely through the fortress. She still didn't speak, but she followed Rian's instructions with precise attention, almost military. She memorized the layout of the halls, the turns of the staircases. He found her once in the library, tracing letters in the dust of an old book. "You can read?" he asked. A small shake of her head. "Then you're learning." She looked down almost shyly, and wrote on the table with her fingertip. "Want to?" Rian felt an unexpected swell of pride. "I'll bring you books." Spring tried to push through the snow that week. Ice dripped from the eaves, and the fortress courtyard turned slick with meltwater. Rian decided she needed fresh air again. "Come with me," he said one morning, handing her a cloak. Ash followed him through a side corridor she had never seen. At the end of it lay a heavy wooden door. When he opened it, a rush of green scent met them, damp earth, mint and pine resin. Beyond was a walled garden, overgrown but still alive. Ash froze in the doorway. The noise of bees, the smell of soil, it was overwhelming. Her hands trembled. "It's safe," Rian said softly. "This part of the fortress was my mother's. No one comes here anymore." He stepped aside, letting her move first. Slowly she walked down the path, fingers brushing the tall weeds. A patch of rosemary caught her attention. She knelt and broke a sprig, rubbing it between her fingers before lifting it to her nose. "Rosemary," Rian said. "You know it." She nodded, then pointed to a cluster of small purple flowers. "Lavender," she wrote on her slate. "You're right." He crouched beside her. You were trained in healing, weren't you? She hesitated, then nodded. Her gaze turned distant. He recognized the look. Memories she didn't want. Did they make you use what you learned? He asked quietly. Another nod. Rian's jaw tightened. For them. She didn't look at him, but the answer was yes. He stayed silent for a long time, then said, You can still use it, but this time for yourself. For whoever you choose. That caught her attention. She looked at him as if trying to understand the shape of freedom. He smiled faintly. Start with these. He pointed to the beds of wild mint and sage. Trim the dead branches. Take what you need. No one here will stop you. He left her there and watched from the window above his study. For hours she worked among the herbs, careful and patient. When she finally sat beneath the old oak, surrounded by neat bundles of green, she looked more alive than he had ever seen her. At sunset he went back down. She was humming, barely audible, almost like breathing, but it was sound. The first sound he had heard from her voice other than a scream. That's a start, he said quietly. She startled, then smiled, small, uncertain. Tomorrow, he told her, I'll bring parchment. You can write what each plant does. Maybe start a record. She nodded eagerly. Before they could leave, a shout rang out across the yard. You there? Omega. Rian's head snapped toward the sound. One of the younger warriors, Corin, strode forward, face flushed. She's not cleared for the outer grounds, he barked. Orders say she stays in the south wing. I gave new orders, Rian said coldly. Corin didn't back down. She's dangerous. Look at her eyes. Ash froze. Fear flickered through her, sharp and fast. Rian saw it, and something primal rose in him. Step back, he warned. Corin ignored him and reached for her arm. In that instant, the air cracked again. Ash's wolf surged forward. She let out a low, broken growl. It wasn't loud, but every wolf in earshot heard it. Corin stumbled backward, eyes wide. Rian moved in a blur, catching the man by the collar and slamming him against the wall. You don't touch what's under my protection, he hissed. Ever. Corin's breath came fast. Alpha, she growled. She remembered what she is, Rian said. That's more than you've done today. He dropped the soldier to the ground. Apologize. Corin stared at him, then at Ash, and stammered. I'm sorry. Rian didn't release him until Ash gave a small nod. When the courtyard emptied, he turned to her. You growled, he said, still half in disbelief. She looked uncertain, as though expecting punishment. He smiled instead. Good. For the first time, something bright sparked in her eyes. Pride, fragile but real. That night, he couldn't stop replaying the sound in his head. A single rough note, half wolf, half woman, strong enough to make the fortress tremble. His wolf purred inside him, pleased. He's waking. He went to her room, meaning to check the wound on her wrist from Corin's grip. She was sitting by the window again, moonlight pooling over her hair. When he entered, she lifted her hand, showing him a small bundle of herbs tied with string. For me, he asked. She nodded. He took it, inhaling the scent, lavender and pine resin. To help me sleep. She smiled. You think I don't sleep? She raised an eyebrow, a teasing expression that startled him with its sudden warmth. He laughed quietly. All right, I'll use it. He started to leave, then hesitated at the door. You did well today. Don't forget that. Her gaze softened. She touched her throat, then her heart, and gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Rian left before he could say something foolish. From her window, Ash watched the snow drift against the dark pines. Her hand still tingled from where she'd touched the herbs and the soil, from where she'd stood her ground. For the first time she could remember, she had fought back, and no one had hurt her for it. She reached for the slate and wrote slowly, almost reverently. I am not nothing. Then she wiped it clean before morning, as if afraid someone might see. When dawn came, the fortress seemed changed. The servants who passed her in the corridor nodded respectfully. Few even smiled. News of the growl had spread. The pack understood what it meant. The silent girl had a wolf after all. Rian met her in the courtyard, where frost still clung to the stones. "Ready to try something new?" he asked. She tilted her head in question. He tossed her a padded wooden stick from the training yard. "Defense. I'll show you how to stop someone grabbing your wrist." Her eyes widened, but she didn't back away. "Hold still," he said, stepping closer. He wrapped his fingers gently around her wrist, then twisted his own hand outward, showing the motion. "Like this. Their strength doesn't matter if you know the angle." She mimicked him, hesitant at first. He corrected her grip, patient. When she tried again, the move came faster, smoother. He nodded approval. "Again," he said. They practiced until the pale sun dipped behind the walls. When they finally stopped, both were breathing hard, faces flushed from the cold. Rian looked down at her, sweat shining on her temple, eyes bright with life. "You're learning fast." She smiled, the faint curve of someone who had rediscovered herself. For the first time, he didn't see the girl from the cage. He saw the woman she could become. That night, as he walked the halls, the fortress felt different. Lighter somehow. He knew it was because of her. Because the ghost he'd rescued was no longer a ghost. And as he looked out over the frozen forest, his wolf whispered a truth he could no longer deny. This is only the beginning. Winter's end came slowly to Frosthold. The sun broke through the clouds in thin shards, lighting the mountains in silver. Inside the south wing, Ash sat near the fire with her sleeves rolled up. Her skin, once gray and bruised, was beginning to show color again. Rian entered carrying a basin of warm water, a cloth, and a small bottle of lavender soap. "The healers say your strength's returning," he said. "But you still won't let anyone near you. So I'll do it." Ash looked at him in question. He gestured to the basin. "We can't have the Alpha's guest looking like she fought a bear." She hesitated only a second before nodding. Rian knelt beside her. His hands were steady as he dipped the cloth into the water and wrung it out. The smell of lavender filled the room, soft and clean. "I'll start with your arms," he said quietly. "If you want me to stop, you only have to move away." "Understood." She nodded again. He touched her wrist carefully and began to wipe the dirt from her skin. The first pass revealed thin white scars crossing her forearm like faded lightning. The next revealed more, circles, lines, runes burned so long ago the skin had grown around them. Rian froze. "Who did this?" Ash didn't answer. She only looked away, eyes dark with memories. He lifted her arm toward the firelight, studying the largest mark near her throat, a half-circle carved in old scar tissue, faintly glowing beneath the surface. "Not ink, not burn. Magic." "It's still active," he murmured. "I can feel the pull." Her breathing quickened. Rian caught her gaze. "They used blood magic on you. To silence you." Ash pressed her fingers to the mark as if trying to hide it. He shook his head gently. "No, you didn't choose this. Someone bound you." He rinsed the cloth again, cleaning the last of the dirt away. "Whoever did it wanted more than your voice," he said. "They wanted your wolf." The faint light under her skin pulsed once at the word. She flinched but didn't move away. When he was done, he draped a blanket over her shoulders. "There's a witch in the northern ridge. My aunt. She was cast out for using forbidden spells, but she knows this kind of magic. She'll tell us what it means." Ash's eyes widened, fear, disbelief. Then she shook her head. "You don't trust witches?" he asked. Her look said no, but also I've seen too many. Rian sighed. "You've survived worse than a conversation. And if she can free you, you'll speak again. You'll be whole." Her throat moved, a sound almost forming. Then she wrote on the slate, "Dangerous." He smiled grimly. "You worry about me. That's new." She pointed the chalk at him like a warning. "All right," he said. "We'll go carefully. I promise." When he left, she sat by the fire, touching the glowing mark. It throbbed faintly beneath her skin, hot then cold, as though something inside her was listening. That night Rian dreamed again. Flames, chains, a white wolf screaming without sound. He woke drenched in sweat, his pulse matching the rhythm of the storm outside. His wolf whispered the same word over and over. Unseal her. He went to her room before dawn. She was already awake, staring out at the snow. We ride at sunrise, he said. Bring the herbs you trust. The witch will want blood. Ash looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. The road north wound through frozen valleys. They rode side by side, the horse's breath clouding in the cold. For the first time since the raid, Rian felt something close to calm. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was companionable. Midway up the ridge, he glanced over his shoulder. She was wrapped in his cloak again, the hood slipping back to reveal hair like pale smoke. She caught him watching and tilted her head slightly, a question in her eyes. You remind me of snow before dawn, he said without thinking. Her lips curved in a faint, startled smile. He looked away quickly. Don't let it go to your head. They reached the witch's dwelling by nightfall, a house built into the side of the cliff, half stone, half root and shadow. Smoke rose from the chimney that wasn't wood smoke but something darker, bitter with herbs and iron. Rian knocked once. The door opened before he touched it. A woman stood framed in the doorway, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. Nephew, she said, her voice dry as frost. And this must be the ghost you dragged out of the south. Her name is Ash, Rian said. Not her true one, the witch murmured. But it will do for now. Come in. The inside smelled of old parchment and salt. Candles burned in shallow bowls. Ash hovered near the door while Rian followed the witch to the center of the room. Show me the mark, the witch said. Ash hesitated until Rian gave a small nod. She drew the blanket aside, revealing the faintly glowing rune beneath her throat. The witch's eyes brightened. Ah, that's no simple silencing charm. This is sealing magic, ancient, outlawed. Someone locked her wolf away. Rian's jaw clenched. Can you break it? Anything made by blood can be unmade by blood, the witch said. But it will hurt. How much? Enough to kill her if her will falters. Ash met Rian's gaze steadily. She touched her chest and nodded once. She's certain, the witch said. Then we begin at dusk. By nightfall, the witch's den glowed red with candlelight. A circle of salt surrounded a stone slab in the center. Symbols drawn in ash covered the floor. Ash lay down on the slab without being told. Her bare feet trembled, but her eyes did not waver. Rian sat at her head, his hand resting lightly on hers. The witch began to chant in the old tongue. The air grew thick. The candles bent sideways as if from wind that wasn't there. Blood from Ash's arm mixed with the salt, turning the circle crimson. Rian felt the power twist through the room, pulling at him too. The rune on her throat flared, first faint, then blinding. Ash arched, breath tearing silent from her lungs. Rian tightened his grip on her hand. Stay with me. Breathe. The witch pressed 2 fingers to the glowing mark. Call it, she hissed. Call your wolf. Ash's body convulsed. Her mouth opened, still no sound came. Her nails scraped stone, leaving streaks of blood. Fight it, Rian urged. You're stronger than what they made you. Her eyes met his, wild, desperate, and something broke. A sound ripped from her throat, raw and unformed, more growl than scream. The rune cracked. Golden light spilled out like fire through ice. The witch staggered back. It's working, she shouted over the roar of energy. Don't let go. Rian held tighter. The glow spread across her chest, down her arms. For an instant the air smelled of forests and moonlight, and then the world exploded in silence. When it cleared, Ash lay motionless, her skin streaked with silver light that slowly faded to pale. The rune was gone. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Rian bent close. Ash, can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered. Yes. The word was barely a whisper, hoarse but real. Rian froze, the breath leaving him in a rush. She could speak. He cupped her face gently. Say it again. Her lips trembled. Yes. He laughed once, half disbelieving, half relieved. You did it. The witch wiped sweat from her brow. The seal's broken, but not the bond that came with it. The power that bound her will look for a new master. Be ready. Rian glanced up sharply. What does that mean? It means the one who marked her will feel the break. He'll come. They stayed in the witch's den until morning. Ash slept through most of it, her voice too raw for more than whispers. When she finally woke, sunlight spilled through the cracks in the wall. She sat up slowly, touching her throat in disbelief. It's gone, she whispered. Rian nodded. And so is the pain. She looked at him, eyes glistening. Thank you. The words were uneven, childlike, but each syllable hit him harder than any weapon. He had never realized how much silence had weighed between them until it broke. He smiled. You don't owe me thanks. I do, she said, voice thin but firm. You listened. He didn't know what to answer. Instead he handed her a water skin. Drink. You'll need strength for the ride home. As they left the ridge, fog rolled through the trees. The air felt heavier, as if the mountains were holding their breath. Halfway down the path, Ash reined in her horse. Someone's watching, she said quietly. Rian scanned the forest. Where? She pointed toward the shadows between the pines. He caught a flash of movement, dark cloak, red eyes, then it vanished. Keep riding, he ordered. They didn't stop until Frosthold's gates loomed ahead. The guards opened the way at once, alarmed by the Alpha's expression. Inside the courtyard, Yarrick waited. You were gone too long. Scouts saw riders near the ridge. Rogues, maybe Bloodfang remnants. Rian swung down from his horse. Not rogues. Whoever led the raid knows she's alive now. Yarrick's eyes flicked to Ash, then widened when he heard her rasped, hello. She can talk, he whispered. Rian's voice was grim. And that's exactly what will bring them here. That night, Ash stood in her room before the mirror. Her reflection looked unfamiliar. Eyes bright, shoulders straight. When she touched her throat, the skin was smooth, no mark, no glow. She whispered her own name softly, tasting it like a secret. Ash, she said. Then after a pause. Alive. A knock sounded. Rian entered, carrying a small bundle of books. Something to help you practice speaking, he said. She smiled. Books. You remember the word. I remember many things, she said slowly, each word careful. But not all are good. They rarely are. He set the books on the table and met her eyes. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we plan. If that which is right, someone's coming for you. Her expression hardened. Then we wait. Rian felt the shiver of his wolf's approval. The timid girl from the cage was gone. In her place stood something sharper, brighter. A survivor with a voice at last. The next morning dawned clear and cold. The fortress stirred with the usual rhythm. Soldiers drilling, smiths hammering. But beneath it ran a new current of tension. Word had already spread. The silent Omega could speak, and her voice carried power. Rian met Yarrick in the war room. Send patrols east, he said. Double the guard at the gates. You think they'll come so soon? I think they already have. He turned as footsteps approached. Ash stood in the doorway, dressed in a plain tunic, her hair braided back. Her voice was still rough but steady. If they're coming for me, let me help stop them. Rian hesitated. You've barely recovered. I'm not weak, she said quietly. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. Then you'll train. Every day until you can defend yourself. Her eyes glinted with determination. When do we start? Now. They crossed to the training yard. The morning light caught the frost on the stones, scattering it like shattered glass. Warriors paused to watch as the Alpha placed a blade in the girl's hands. This is not to kill, Rian said. It's to protect. You fight only when there's no other choice. Ash nodded, gripping the hilt. He moved behind her, adjusting her stance, guiding her shoulders. Balance comes from here, he said, touching the center of her back. Don't lean away from power, meet it. She swung once, awkward, twice smoother. By the third strike the blade sang through the air cleanly. Rian smiled. You learn fast. She looked up at him, sweat shining at her temple. You teach well. He stepped back, watching her find her rhythm. The courtyard rang with the sound of steel and breath, sharp and alive. Above them, the first ravens of spring circled, their cries echoing across the mountains. Rian watched her and thought, whatever storm is coming, she'll face it. And so will I. Dusk fell red and restless over Frosthold. Wind carried the scent of pine and steel, battle's warning. Rian stood on the ramparts watching the horizon turn dark. His wolf paced just beneath his skin, uneasy. Ash trained below in the yard. The torchlight traced the motion of her blade as she moved through drills. Every strike landed with precision. Her body, once frail and hesitant, had learned strength again. When she stopped, her breath rose in white clouds. She looked up toward the wall and found his gaze waiting. The faintest smile crossed her face, brief but real. Rian descended the steps. You move like you've done this before, he said. Learn fast, she answered, her voice still soft but steadier each day. Faster than most of my soldiers. He reached for her wrist, turning it gently to check the skin. You're bruising less. Strong now, she said simply. He smiled. You always were. Yarrick appeared from the shadows, his tone urgent. Alpha. Scouts found signs beyond the ridge. For riders maybe more. Not ours. Rian's expression hardened. Bloodfang. They carried their scent. Ash's hand tightened on the hilt. For me. Rian didn't deny it. They'll test our borders first. You'll stay inside until I say otherwise. She shook her head. Hide again. No. This isn't the Kennels, he said evenly. You're not trapped, you're protected. Her voice dropped, quiet but fierce. If I don't fight, they win. He studied her face, pale, calm, unflinching. The girl he'd found in chains would never have spoken those words. The woman standing before him could command them. Finally he nodded. Then you'll fight. But by my side, not alone. That night the pack gathered in the great hall. The walls glowed with torchlight. Every shadow seemed to lean closer. Rian's voice carried through the crowd. Bloodfang crosses our land again. They come not for war, but for one of ours. That makes it war. A murmur ran through the room. Eyes turned toward Ash, standing near the fire. Some looked fearful, others curious. She met each gaze without flinching. Rian continued. They'll expect weakness. Instead, they'll find Frosthold awake. A roar answered him. The warriors pounded their chests, their wolves rising in shared defiance. When the noise faded, Rian looked toward Ash. You have a voice now. Use it. She blinked, startled. Me. Tell them who you are. For a heartbeat she hesitated. Then she stepped forward, the firelight painting her hair silver. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. I was their captive, she said. They took my name, my wolf, my sound. But they did not take me. You fight not for an Omega, they already tried to break that. You fight for the pack that freed me. Silence followed. Then someone shouted. For Frosthold. Another took up the cry, and soon the hall thundered with it. Ash stood still, eyes wide with wonder at the sound. Her words echoing back through 100 voices. Rian watched her, pride and fear warring in his chest. When she caught his gaze, he saw the same mix in hers. Later, when the hall emptied, he found her staring into the dying fire. You spoke like a leader, he said. She turned toward him, uncertain. Leaders have voices. He smiled faintly. So do queens. She frowned. I'm no queen. Not yet, he murmured. 2 days later the first attack came. The alarm bell clanged through the fog. Wolves raced across the yard. Steel rang against steel. Rian met Yarrick at the gate, sword drawn. 3 riders, Yarrick reported. Testing the wall. The rest wait in the forest. Keep the walls sealed, Rian ordered. I'll take the field. Alone. Not alone. Ash appeared at his side, her cloak whipping in the wind. Rian gave her a sharp look. I said. You said I fight by your side, she interrupted. He cursed under his breath but handed her a dagger. Stay behind me. They crossed the bridge into the trees. Snow muffled every sound except their breathing. The riders broke from the shadows, wolves with red eyes and cruel laughter. Rian moved first. Steel flashed. The first rider fell. Ash ducked another swing, rolled, and drove her blade upward into his ribs. The motion was instinct, fierce and sure. When the last rider fled into the trees, the air fell silent except for their ragged breaths. Blood smoked on the snow. Rian turned to her, chest heaving. You all right? She nodded, wiping the blade clean. I remember fighting, she said slowly. Before the cages. Then they didn't take everything. Her eyes met his. They will take nothing else. That night the fires burned high in the courtyard. The pack celebrated the victory, though everyone knew it was only the first test. Ash stood at the edge of the crowd, watching the flames twist skyward. Rian joined her quietly. You fought well. So did you, she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. He studied her face, the way the light caught the new confidence there. You're changing, Ash. Finding what was mine, she said simply. He hesitated. And when you find it all? She looked at him, eyes steady. Then I'll decide who I want to be. The following week brought uneasy peace. The scouts found no more riders, but Rian could feel the tension building, the storm before the strike. He spent the days fortifying the outer wall and the nights walking the corridors unable to sleep. Ash's recovery continued. Her speech grew clearer, her strength sharper. Sometimes Rian caught her practicing with the guards at dawn. Her movements faster than even she seemed to expect. One morning, she stumbled mid-swing and dropped her blade. When she looked up, her eyes glowed faint silver for an instant before returning to normal. The guard froze. Rian arrived just in time to see it. It's starting, he said quietly. What? She asked. Your wolf. The seal kept it buried, but it's waking now. Ash pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the wild rhythm beneath. It hurts. He nodded. It will until you let it out. How? Rian looked toward the mountains. There's a clearing north of here where I learned to shift for the first time. It's sacred to our kind. I'll take you there tonight. The moon rose full and bright over the ridge. They rode through the pines until the forest opened into a wide circle of frostlit grass. The air hummed with old power. Rian dismounted. This place remembers every wolf who's ever run free. Ash stood at the edge of the clearing, trembling. What if it doesn't remember me? It will, he said gently. You just have to call it. He stepped back, giving her space. She closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of earth and snow. The wind brushed her hair across her face. Rian's voice came low and steady. Let go of the pain first. It can't follow you where you're going. Her lips parted. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the air around her began to shimmer. Light crawled along her skin, silver and white. Her breath came fast. The sound that tore from her throat wasn't a scream. It was a howl, pure and raw, echoing through the mountains. Rian's wolf answered instinctively. The clearing blazed with twin bursts of energy. One gold, one silver. When the light faded, a white wolf stood where Ash had been. Her eyes the color of starlight. She turned her head toward him, uncertain, as if asking, is this real? He shifted in one smooth motion. His massive black wolf towering over her. They circled once, then pressed foreheads together, a silent vow older than language. Above them, the moonlight spilled like water. They ran until dawn. Through the forest, over frozen streams, across fields of wild snowflowers that bowed under their paws. The world blurred around them, two streaks of light and shadow weaving through the dark. For the first time in years, Rian felt whole. When they returned to the clearing, both shifted back, breathless, laughing in disbelief. Ash fell to her knees, hands shaking. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this," she whispered. "You were born to," Rian said. "No cage could take that away." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Thank you, Alpha." He shook his head. "No, Rian." Her voice softened. "Rian." The sound of his name on her lips nearly undid him. He turned toward the trees, trying to steady himself. "We should head back before the pack sends a search party." But Ash was still staring at the horizon, where the first sunlight bled into the snow. "They'll come soon," she said quietly. "The ones who did this." "Yes. Then we end it." Rian met her gaze. "Together." By the time they reached Frosthold, dawn had burned the mist away. The guards at the gate stepped aside in awe. Word of the two wolves returning together spread like wildfire. Inside, the pack waited. Yarrick approached, bowing his head. "They've seen the light in the north. They know you've awakened her." "Good," Rian said. "Let them know we're ready." Ash stood beside him, calm amid the murmurs. For the first time, no one looked at her with pity or suspicion. They looked at her with respect. Rian watched her as she lifted her chin, silver eyes meeting every gaze. "I'm not afraid," she said simply. He smiled. "You shouldn't be. Fear is for those who've never been broken." That night, the fortress celebrated. Music echoed through the halls, laughter and howls blending under the moon. Rian found Ash on the balcony overlooking the valley. The wind tugged at her hair. "You belong here now," he said quietly. "Do I? Every stone in these walls will remember your howl." She smiled faintly. "And you?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I'll remember the silence before it." They stood in easy quiet for a while. The snow fell light around them, soft as breath. Below, the pack danced, their joy fierce and defiant. Rian turned toward her again. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow we prepare for whatever comes." Ash nodded, her voice steady. "I'll be ready." He believed her. In the distance, beyond the ridge, a red flare rose into the night sky, the Bloodfang signal. War was coming. But Frosthold no longer stood on guard for a broken captive. It stood for a Luna with a voice and a wolf of her own. Rian watched the crimson light fade against the stars and whispered to the wind, "Let them come." Frosthold never slept after the red flare. By dawn, the courtyard rang with the clang of iron. Armor polished, arrows fletched, walls strengthened. The entire pack moved with grim purpose, a single body preparing for one heartbeat, the fight to come. Rian Vale stood at the map table with Yarrick, marking the Bloodfang approach routes with a knife tip. "They'll come through the pass," he said. "They've used it before, steep sides, narrow choke. Perfect for an ambush if we hold the ridge." Yarrick nodded. "Scouts say 2 days, maybe less. They're bringing their alpha." "Malrek," Rian murmured. The name tasted like ash. "He's the one who branded her." Jarek's jaw tightened. "Then this isn't just war. It's retribution." Rian said nothing. His eyes drifted toward the open door, where Ash crossed the yard in a gray cloak, helping the younger wolves pack supplies. The sight steadied him. The ache in his chest dulled. "She shouldn't be on the front line," Yarrick said quietly. "She won't hide," Rian answered. "She's not someone I can command anymore. She's something the pack follows." Yarrick gave a short, rough laugh. "So are you two leading us to victory or ruin?" "Both maybe," Rian said. "But we'll face it together." By evening, snow had begun to fall again, light as dust. In the main hall, Ash stood before the hearth, tightening the strap of her newly forged bracer. The metal was simple, engraved only with a spiral rune for strength. Rian entered, his own armor half buckled. "Fits?" he asked. She flexed her wrist. "Better than the cages." He smiled faintly. "Low bar, but I'll take it." Her expression softened. "You worry. I always do before battle. For me. For everyone. But mostly you." Her gaze held his, steady and calm. "Then I'll live for you to worry again." Rian shook his head, half amused, half in awe. "You've learned to talk back. You taught me." The night before the march, the pack gathered under the stars. Rian addressed them from the stone platform. "Bloodfang thinks fear makes us weak," he said. "They forgot fear also makes wolves fight harder. When they cross that ridge, they'll find no easy prey." Ash stepped forward beside him. "They tried to kill my voice. But every voice here will rise with mine. Together we're louder than their chains." A low growl of approval rolled through the crowd. Warriors bared their teeth in silent vow. Above them the moon climbed high, clear, unbroken. When the assembly dispersed, Rian found her alone by the frozen fountain. "You spoke like a Luna," he said. She shrugged. "I spoke truth." He took a slow breath. "If something happens tomorrow." She cut him off gently. "Then we finish what they started. But not alone." He reached out, fingers brushing her hair from her face. "Not alone," he agreed. The silence between them stretched warm and certain. The world narrowed to breath and heartbeat. Then she turned away, breaking the spell. "Sleep, Alpha. Tomorrow you lead." The Bloodfang army arrived with the dawn. From the ridge above the pass, Rian watched them spill into the valley, a black tide of wolves and men, banners torn by wind. At their center rode Malrek, tall, scarred, eyes the color of old blood. "Bring her to me," Malrek's voice boomed across the snow. "Or I'll take her from your ashes." Rian lifted his sword, gold light rippling along the blade. "You'll have to walk through me first." The valley answered with 1,000 howls. Rian's own wolf surged forward, golden eyes flashing. "Now!" The first wave hit like thunder. Arrows hissed, steel clashed. Snow exploded underfoot. Frosthold's warriors held the ridge, a wall of fury. Ash fought beside Rian, quick and silent, her dagger flashing silver. Every movement felt guided by something ancient. Her wolf lending strength and grace. When one of the Bloodfang brutes lunged at her, she sidestepped, hooked his leg and drove him down into the snow. She didn't hesitate. Rian saw it all while cutting his own path through the fray. Pride flared even in battle's chaos. The girl who once trembled in a cage now fought like the storm itself. The fight raged for hours. The mountain air turned red. When at last the enemy line faltered, Malrek strode forward alone, his sword glowing with dark energy. "Rian Vale," he snarled. "Still playing hero." Rian's voice was ice. "Still preying on the weak." "I made her," Malrek said. "Without me, she'd still be nothing." Ash stepped up beside Rian, eyes blazing silver. "You made silence. I made it break." Malrek's grin twisted. "Then scream for me, pet." He lunged. Rian met him halfway. Steel rang, sparks flew. The impact shook the ground. They traded blows, neither yielding. When Malrek's blade glanced off Rian's shoulder, pain flashed, but it fueled the wolf inside him. Ash saw the opening first. She darted forward, catching Malrek's wrist, twisting until bone cracked. He roared and backhanded her, sending her sprawling. Rian's fury exploded. He drove his sword through Malrek's guard, knocking him to one knee. "For every voice you stole," he said, "this is your silence." Malrek laughed even then. "You think killing me frees her? My mark never dies." Rian hesitated just long enough for Malrek to strike back. The blade slashed across his side. Blood spilled hot against the snow. Ash pushed herself up, voice raw. "Enough!" The air around her shimmered, light rising from her skin. Her wolf howled through her, the sound shaking the mountain. Malrek staggered, the glow from his blade flickering. stepped forward. You said your mark never dies. Watch. She raised her hand, palm glowing. The rune that had once burned her throat blazed into the air between them, then shattered like glass. The power recoiled into Malrek, knocking him backward. Rian's sword met him mid-fall. The impact split the air in a shockwave of light and sound. When it faded, Malrek lay motionless. Silence fell. Then from the cliffs a single howl rose. Ash's wolf cry, fierce and triumphant. The Frosthold pack answered in unison. After the battle, the valley lay quiet except for the wind. Rian stood among the fallen, blood staining his side, breath shallow. Ash reached him quickly, steadying him with both hands. You're hurt, she said. Just bleeding, he managed with a faint smile. Nothing fatal. She looked at the wound, frowned, and tore a strip from her cloak to bind it. Her hands didn't shake. Malrek is gone, he said. The curse with him. Her eyes lifted to his. Then it's over. For now, he said. Peace never lasts long. Then we build more of it before it breaks again. He chuckled softly. Always telling me what to do. Someone has to. They stood there until the wind eased, until the smell of blood gave way to the scent of pine. Around them, the pack gathered their wounded and raised their fallen. The war was done. That night Frosthold burned victory fires higher than the walls. Wolves sang to the moon. Laughter echoed off the stone. Ash sat on the steps of the great hall, watching the sparks drift upward. When Rian joined her, his side bandaged, she looked over and smiled. Still alive, she said. Disappointed. Relieved. He laughed quietly, then sobered. You ended him. You broke what he built. Her gaze went distant. He built fear. I learned something stronger. What's that? Belonging. Rian studied her face. Peaceful now, not empty. Then maybe you found what you were meant to. She tilted her head. And you? He looked out at the fires. Maybe I finally remembered what I was meant to protect. The music swelled behind them. The pack chanted her name. Ash, the silent flame. She listened, eyes shining, the sound of their voices weaving around her like warmth. Rian rose, offered his hand. Come. They're calling their Luna. She hesitated, then took it. Together they stepped into the circle of firelight. The wolves parted, bowing their heads. Rian spoke clearly so every ear heard. This is Ash of Frosthold, the voice that broke the chains, the heart that stood when others fell. From this night, she stands beside me as Luna. The response came like thunder. The pack howled, a chorus of loyalty that shook the stars. Ash looked at him through the glow, eyes wet with light. I was no one, she whispered. Now I'm home. Rian leaned closer, voice low enough for her alone. And Frosthold will never forget it. Above them, the moon burned white and whole. The night carried the sound of 1,000 wolves promising, in one shared breath, to guard the peace they had bled to win. Snow fell again, light as breath, covering the scars of battle. Frosthold slept for the first time in months. Fires burned low, the forges quiet. The wolves' howls softened into lullabies. Rian walked the battlements alone. The air was sharp with iron and pine. Beneath it, he could smell the faint sweetness of spring trying to return. His wound had closed, but a deeper ache lingered. An echo of the fight, the weight of leadership. Below, in the courtyard, Ash moved through the morning mist, checking on the healers and the wounded. She no longer needed guards to follow her. Wherever she went, heads bowed in respect. Children ran to her with baskets of herbs. Warriors paused to offer nods of thanks. She accepted all of it with calm grace. Rian leaned against the parapet, watching. It still amazed him how quiet strength could command so much loyalty. Yarrick joined him after a while. You should rest, the beta said. I will. You've been saying that for 3 days. Rian's mouth curved faintly. The world doesn't stop because we won one war. Yarrick followed his gaze downward. She's changed everything. Yes. Rian's tone was thoughtful. Frosthold feels, alive again. She's your Luna now. Pack sees it. But they'll expect a ceremony soon. Rian's eyes darkened. They'll get one when she's ready. Not before. Yarrick chuckled. You almost sound like you care what she wants. Rian didn't answer. He already knew the truth, he cared too much. Later that day, Ash climbed the tower steps, her cloak trailing behind her. Rian didn't hear her until she was standing beside him. You never sleep, she said quietly. He smiled. You sound like Yarrick. Then maybe you should listen. Maybe I can't. She leaned on the parapet, looking out over the snowy peaks. You carry their pain. They're my pack. Still heavy, she said, even when shared. He glanced at her, caught by the simple truth in her voice. How do you bear yours? I talk to the sky, she said, lifting her chin. It listens. And it doesn't judge. He followed her gaze. The clouds were thin, the stars faint beneath daylight. Does it answer? Always. Just quietly. They stood together in the wind, silent for a long while. Then she said, the healers told me something today. Some of the injured will never shift again. Their wolves are gone. Rian's hands tightened on the stone. Bloodfang used dark spells. Their wolves can return in time. Her eyes were steady. You don't believe that. He exhaled. No. She turned to him. Then we find another way. If a spell took their wolves, maybe another can bring them back. Rian's brow furrowed. You'd trust magic again. I trust hope, she said simply. That night, Frosthold held its first quiet feast since victory. Tables lined the hall, candles flickering on silver cups. The pack filled the room with laughter that sounded like healing. Ash sat beside Rian at the high table, wearing a cloak of deep blue trimmed with silver. When the songs began, the wolves sang her name again. Ash, the silent flame, and she listened, not blushing, not shrinking, but meeting every gaze with calm pride. Halfway through the feast, she stood and raised her cup. For those who never came home, she said, her voice carrying clear and low. And for those still learning how to live. The hall fell quiet. Then Rian rose beside her, lifting his cup too. For the Luna who reminded us how. The cheers shook the rafters. Ash lowered her head, humbled but smiling. When the hall emptied later, she found Rian standing alone near the fire. Why do you always stand apart? She asked. Someone has to watch. You've been watching your whole life, she said softly. You can rest now. He looked down at her, the firelight reflected in his eyes. If I rest, who keeps you safe? She smiled faintly. You forget, Alpha. I'm not the one who needs saving anymore. For once he had no reply. The peace didn't last. 3 weeks after the battle, the scouts brought news. Bloodfang hadn't died with Malrek. A new leader had risen. His sister Vara, known among the rogue packs as the Shadow Alpha. Ruthless, cunning and worse. She knew dark magic as well as any witch. Rian read the report twice, then handed it to Yarrick. She'll come to finish what he started. Jarek's expression hardened. We'll be ready. But readiness wasn't enough. That night, strange things began to happen. Fires burned blue. Wolves heard whispers in their dreams. One of the healers woke screaming, claiming she'd seen eyes in the walls. She felt it too. The air in her room grew cold without wind. Frost crept across the windows even with the fire lit. When she reached for her pendant, it burned hot against her skin, too hot for normal metal. She went straight to Rian's chambers. He opened the door before she could knock. I felt it, he said. Something's here. She nodded. It's her. Vara. She's calling to the magic that once bound me. Trying to pull it back. Rian swore under his breath. Then she knows you broke it. Ash stepped closer, urgency in her eyes. She'll come for me first. Not Frosthold. Me. Then she'll have to go through all of us, Rian said firmly. You're not alone anymore. I was never meant to be alone, she said half to herself. That's why the bond found you. His gaze softened. You still believe that? Yes. The bond woke your wolf. Mine followed. It wasn't accident, it was choice. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Then we'll choose again. Whatever she sends, we face it together. Days passed with rising tension. The forest grew too quiet. The air tasted wrong. Even the birds avoided frosthold skies. Ash began to dream again. Visions of chains coiling through snow, of eyes watching from darkness. Every morning she woke with her throat burning faintly, the ghost of the rune glowing beneath her skin. Rian noticed the change. You're weakening, he said one morning as they walked the ramparts. I'm remembering, she corrected. She wants me to fear the mark again. I won't. He turned to her, frustration edging his voice. You don't have to prove anything. Yes, I do, she said quietly. I need to know I can still stand if she comes. Not as your Luna. As myself. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Then stand. I'll guard your back. That evening, a storm rose over the valley. Dark clouds swirling unnaturally fast. Lightning flashed green across the peaks. The air trembled. The first wolves who sensed danger began to shift, forming defensive lines. Rian strode through the courtyard shouting orders. Seal the gates. No one alone. Mages to the north wall. Ash stood in the center of the yard, hair whipping in the wind. Her eyes glowed silver again. She's close, she said. Too close. The ground shuddered. Snow cracked open, and from it poured shadows shaped like wolves. Smoky half-formed things with red eyes and claws of ice. Rian drew his sword. Wraiths! The pack met them head-on. Steel passed through some as if cutting mist. Others shattered like glass, reforming seconds later. Rian fought with raw fury, his blade a streak of gold. But for every shadow slain, two more emerged. Then Ash stepped forward. The storm's center seemed to shift toward her. She lifted her hand. Light gathered in her palm. You want me, she shouted into the wind. Come take me. A voice answered, low, cold, female. Little flame. Still pretending you can burn. Rian spun toward the sound. A figure stepped from the swirling snow, Vara. Cloaked in black, eyes burning violet, she smiled like winter's edge. I should thank you, Vara said. Breaking my brother's seal saved me the trouble. Now his power is mine. You'll never control it, Ash said. Vara's grin widened. I already do. She raised her hands. The wraiths screamed as they merged into her body, making her taller, darker. The ground froze solid underfoot. Bow, little flame, or I'll unmake you piece by piece. Rian stepped between them. You'll touch no one here. Brave, Vara sneered. Foolish. She struck. The blast of power threw him back against the wall. Don't crack. Ash ran to him, but he waved her off. Stay, fight. She turned back, silver light blazing from her hands. You want power, Vara? Here's mine. The courtyard erupted in light and shadow. The two forces met midair, colliding in a surge that shook the fortress to its roots. Snow turned to steam. Wolves fell to their knees, blinded by the brilliance. When the glare faded, both women stood locked in place. Ash glowing white, Vara black as smoke. Between them hung the echo of the old rune, reformed, pulsing violently. Rian staggered to his feet. Ash, break it. I'm trying. It feeds on both of you, Vara hissed. It's our blood. You can't destroy what you are. Ash's voice rose over the storm. Then I'll become something else. She pressed her hands together, forcing light into the rune. It shrieked, cracks spreading across its surface. Go back to the dark, she said, and stay there. The rune shattered in a flash of fire. Vara screamed, her body dissolving into smoke that the wind carried away. Silence fell. The storm broke. Snow drifted gently again. Ash dropped to her knees, exhausted. Rian caught her before she fell. It's over, he said softly. She looked up at him, eyes dim but alive. No chains, she whispered. None, he promised. He helped her stand. Around them the pack began to rise, shaken but unbroken. The wraiths were gone. Only the faint scent of ash and ozone remained. Rian looked at the sky, the clouds parting, moonlight spilling across the courtyard. You saved us again, he said. She shook her head weakly. We saved each other. He smiled. Then we'll keep doing it, as long as we have breath. When dawn came, the fortress stood calm once more. The air smelled of snow and sage. From the high tower, Ash watched the sunrise. Her first since the war, her first as a free wolf. The light touched her face, and for the first time in years, she felt warmth without fear. Behind her, Rian joined quietly, resting a hand on the stone beside hers. Morning, he said. Beautiful, she answered. Yes, he agreed. It is. They stood together as the sun climbed higher, painting Frosthold in gold. The wounds would heal. The memories would fade. But their bond, born in chains tempered in fire, would hold. And somewhere far below, the pack's first morning song rose to greet the light. The sun broke through the snow clouds for the first time in months. Its light scattered across the fortress, melting ice from the battlements and flooding the courtyard with warmth. For the wolves of Frosthold, it was a strange sight. Peace felt almost unfamiliar. Ash stood at the edge of the outer wall, eyes half closed against the morning brightness. She listened to the hum of the pack below, the ring of hammers as blacksmiths rebuilt broken gates, the laughter of children playing in the half-frozen courtyard, the low murmur of healers tending the wounded. It was life. Ordinary. Life. Rian found her there, as he always did. You've been standing here since dawn, he said, his voice soft but steady. She smiled faintly. It feels different. The world. It always does after battle. You notice how quiet it is. Too quiet, she asked. He shook his head. Peace has its own sound. You'll learn to like it. Ash looked out at the valley. You've seen so many wars. How do you stop waiting for the next one? You don't, Rian said honestly. You just build something worth protecting in between them. She studied him for a long moment. Then we build. The following weeks were full of rebuilding. Frosthold became a place of motion again. Walls repaired, fields cleared of snow, trade routes reopened. Ash worked beside the others, refusing any special treatment. She helped the cooks, carried supplies, learned the names of every orphan left by the war. At first, the wolves treated her with careful respect. Half awe, half distance, but the more she laughed, the more they relaxed. Soon the children followed her everywhere, tugging at her cloak, calling her Luna Ash. Rian often watched from afar, amused by the way she seemed to dissolve the old fear that had hung over Frosthold for years. She carried no crown, no mark of rank, yet she ruled their hearts. One afternoon, as the first hints of green touched the valley, Rian found her kneeling beside the garden she had once revived, the same herb she had tended before the war. Starting again, he asked. Yes, she said, her hands deep in the soil. Things grow if you let them. Even after fire. He crouched beside her. That's a lesson you learned too well. She looked at him, smiling. Maybe you did too. He reached for a sprig of mint, rolling it between his fingers. Do you ever think about leaving? Her expression softened. Once. Not now. Frosthold isn't a cage. It's home. That night, the pack held a quiet feast under the stars. A celebration not of war, but of survival. Long tables filled the courtyard, and music drifted from flutes and drums. The wolves sang songs not of victory, but of return. Ash danced with the children, her laughter carrying through the night. Rian watched, a rare lightness in his chest. Yarrick nudged him. You should dance too, the beta said. I don't dance. You don't laugh either, and yet here we are. Rian shook his head. I'll watch. That's enough. But when Ash caught his gaze, she walked straight toward him, hand outstretched. Come. He hesitated. Ash, No excuses, Alpha, she said, mock stern. You've faced worse things than music. He sighed, taking her hand. The pack cheered as she pulled him into the circle. He stumbled once, then found the rhythm. Her fingers fit perfectly against his. For a few brief minutes, there were no titles. No Alpha, no Luna, no scars or ghosts. Just two souls who had survived the storm. When the song ended, she looked up at him, breathless. See. Not so terrible. He smiled, a rare, genuine smile. Terrifying, actually. Her laughter rang like a bell in the cold night air. When dawn came, Frosthold glowed golden under the rising sun. The scent of herbs and ash blended with the new grass. The fortress, once built for war, had begun to breathe again. And for the first time, Rian allowed himself to believe that peace might last. The morning after the celebration, the council summoned them both. Rian and Ash entered the great hall together, the air thick with incense and old authority. The elders stood waiting, 5 grey wolves who had seen too many winters and trusted too little in change. Elder Dren spoke first. Frosthold is rebuilt. The Bloodfang threat is gone. Now we must speak of the pack's future. Rian crossed his arms. Then speak. You've led with strength, Alpha Vale, Dren said. But strength alone does not secure peace. Tradition does. Frosthold needs continuity. It needs a Luna crowned before the next moon. Rian's expression darkened. We just buried our dead. You want ceremony already. It isn't for you, Dren said. It's for them. The pack needs to see stability. Needs to see that this, he gestured toward Ash, is not temporary. Ash met the elder's gaze calmly. You doubt me. We doubt change, Dren said bluntly. An Omega Luna is unprecedented. The hall went still. Rian's voice was low and dangerous. Then it's time the old ways broke. Another elder, softer in tone, spoke up. The people love her, Alpha. But love can turn fast. Give them a bond they can see. Ceremony. A mark. Ash said quietly. If it will unite them, I'll do it. Rian turned to her sharply. You don't have to. She interrupted, smiling faintly. You once said we build what's worth protecting. This is part of that, isn't it? He exhaled slowly, then nodded. Then we do it our way. The following week became a whirlwind of preparation. The pack decorated the courtyard with garlands of pine and white flowers. The blacksmiths forged a twin pair of bands, one silver, one gold, to symbolize Alpha and Luna. Ash refused elaborate gowns. She chose instead a simple cloak of white trimmed with frost blue thread. When the day came, the entire pack gathered under the open sky. The wind carried the scent of herbs and snow. Rian stood waiting at the center of the courtyard. When she appeared, the noise fell away. She moved with quiet confidence, eyes steady on his. No music played. Only the heartbeat of the pack behind them. Elder Dren began the ceremony. Frosthold honors the bond that brought us from silence to strength. Speak your vow, Alpha. Rian took her hands. His voice when it came was low but clear. You were the spark that woke my wolf when I believed it dead. You turned ruin into flame. Whatever comes, war, peace, darkness, I'll meet it with you. The elder turned to Ash. And yours, Luna. She smiled softly. You found me in chains. You called me back to myself. I vow to keep that light alive in all who follow us, and never forget where it began. The elder nodded. Then by the bond of wolf and moon, Frosthold claims you both, Alpha and Luna, flame and frost. Rian slid the silver band onto her wrist. She returned the gesture, fastening the gold around his. The moment their hands joined, a pulse of light rippled through the courtyard, the bond sealing itself in the eyes of every witness. The pack erupted in a chorus of howls that rolled across the valley like thunder. Rian leaned close and murmured, You realize you've just agreed to a lifetime of sleepless nights and stubborn warriors? Ash laughed. You forget, I was trained for worse. He smiled. Then let's make this last. That evening, as the celebration filled the hall, Ash slipped away to the balcony overlooking the frozen river. The stars burned bright, cold and clear. She heard footsteps and didn't have to turn. "I thought you'd be inside," Rian said behind her. "Too loud," she said. "I wanted to hear the night." He joined her, the quiet stretching between them like peace. Below, the wolves danced around the fires, their joy echoing through the mountains. "It's strange," Ash said softly. "For so long I thought my life ended in the kennels. But it was only beginning." Rian looked at her. "You gave the pack something it forgot, Hope. And you gave me something I never knew existed," she said. "Freedom that doesn't end at the gates." They stood in silence for a long time, watching the northern lights shimmer faintly across the sky. Frosthold slept safe. The air no longer carried the scent of fear, only pine and promise. Ash turned to him at last, her voice quiet but certain. "We'll keep it, won't we? This peace." Rian's hand found hers. "As long as there are wolves to guard it, and voices to remember how we earned it." She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Then let the world remember." Above them, the moon rose full and bright, casting Frosthold in silver. The fortress stood not as a monument to war, but as a promise of what could be rebuilt from ashes. And beneath that moon, the Alpha and his flame watched the dawn of their new world begin. The snow melted from the lower slopes of the mountains, revealing streams that ran bright and fast, carrying the last chill of winter. Spring came to Frosthold like a hesitant guest. One day of warmth, two of cold, one of sunlight breaking through gray. But the pack felt the change. The earth softened underfoot. The air smelled of green instead of blood. For the first time in many years, Rian Vale slept through the night. Sh noticed it. He no longer rose before dawn to pace the walls. Some mornings she woke before him, sunlight sliding across the floor, the Alpha's steady breathing filling the quiet. She liked that sound, the sound of something finally at rest. But peace was never simple. The war had ended, yet the aftermath brought new troubles. Displaced wolves seeking refuge, scattered rogues claiming old debts, council politics rising again now that the swords were sheathed. Frosthold's walls held, but tension built behind them. One afternoon, while Rian dealt with trade petitions in the hall, Ash walked among the newcomers who had arrived that week. Families from fallen territories, their clothes thin, their faces wary. The children stared at her in awe. The adults bowed or avoided her eyes. A young mother spoke first. "Luna," she said, voice trembling. "Is it true you were once like us? A slave?" She hesitated. The words still carried weight, sharp and heavy. "Yes," she said finally. "But not anymore. And neither are you." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "How did you survive it?" Ash looked around at the fortress, the stone walls, the sound of hammers, the distant laughter of children. "By believing I wouldn't die there," she said. "And by finding someone who believed the same." That evening, Rian found her in the courtyard surrounded by the refugees. They were planting herbs in the soil she had tilled last year, their hands dirty, their faces alive with something that looked almost like hope. "You've turned my fortress into a garden," Rian said. She glanced up at him, smiling faintly. "A garden can feed more than walls protect." He walked closer, crouched beside her. "You know they'll all stay. Frosthold will grow twice its size by summer. Then we'll build more homes," she said simply. He studied her face. Focused, serene, unstoppable. "You were never meant to rule quietly, were you?" Ash wiped her hands and met his gaze. "You were never meant to rule alone." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You always have the last word. Only when it's the right one." The weeks passed. The valley bloomed. Trade caravans came again, bringing news from distant packs. Some rebuilding, some fractured, some whispering of new threats rising far to the south. Rian listened carefully but said little. War had taught him patience. He sent scouts, reopened alliances. The world beyond Frosthold still turned, but for now, the fortress stood untouched. Ash spent her days among the people, teaching, healing, learning their stories. The children adored her. They called her Silent Flame still, though now her voice carried through every hall of the keep. One night, she found Rian at the ramparts again. The stars glimmered in the cold sky. "You think too loudly," she said softly. He smirked. "That obvious. Always." He handed her his cloak when the wind picked up. "I was thinking of the past. How quickly everything changes." "Change isn't loss," she said. "It's living." He turned to her, serious now. "And if it all comes apart again, then we rebuild again," she said simply. "That's what Frosthold means now. Not a fortress. A beginning." Her certainty stilled him. He drew her close, the cold forgotten. "Then we begin," he said. Summer came like fire over the mountains. The snow retreated, leaving green fields in its wake. The pack worked, hunted, and thrived. Wolves from distant lands came seeking peace under Frosthold's banner. For the first time, the fortress was not a border, it was a home. Ash walked through the rebuilt marketplace, now crowded with tents and merchants. The smell of baked bread mixed with pine sap and forge smoke. Children darted between stalls, shouting greetings to her. It no longer surprised her when they did. At the fountain's edge, she stopped to speak with a group of young trainees sparring with wooden blades. "Balance," she told them, correcting one's stance. "Your wolf lives in your spine. Straighten it, and it will listen." The boy tried again, and the strike landed true. He grinned. "Thank you, Luna." She smiled. "You'll thank me when your arms stop aching tomorrow." Rian watched from a distance, arms folded, a small proud smile on his face. When she noticed him, she raised an eyebrow. "You spying on me, Alpha?" "Observing," he said. "There's a difference." "Of course," she teased. "And what does your observing tell you?" "That you've made my soldiers better than I ever did." She laughed. "You're not the jealous type, are you?" He stepped closer. "Only when I realize the pack listens to you more than me." "They listen to both," she said. "They just prefer when the words come kindly." He grinned. "So now you're teaching diplomacy too?" "Someone has to," she said, eyes bright. That evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, Frosthold gathered once more in the courtyard. Rian stood before his pack, Ash beside him. "It's been a year since the war ended," he began. "We buried our dead, rebuilt our walls, and found something worth keeping. Today, Frosthold isn't just a pack. It's a promise." Ash continued, her voice carrying strong and sure. "We've seen what silence can do, how it crushes and hides. But we've also seen how it can listen. So let this place listen to every voice. Alpha, Omega, warrior, healer, none forgotten." The crowd bowed their heads, the sound of agreement rising like wind through leaves. A unity no spell could forge. Yarrick stepped forward, handing Rian a carved wooden box. "We finished it this morning," he said. Rian opened it. Inside lay a small token, a pendant shaped like a flame, cast from the silver of Frosthold's old gates. He turned to Ash. "The pack wanted you to have this. Their Luna, their light." She stared at it, silent for a moment. Then she said, "It belongs to all of us." Still, she let him fasten it around her neck. The silver gleamed against her skin, catching the last light of sunset. Later that night, the fortress slept. Rian and Ash stood once more at the balcony where so much had changed. The stars spread wide, endless. "I used to think peace meant stillness," Rian said. "Now I see its motion, quiet but constant." She nodded. "Peace isn't what comes after war. It's what we build so we don't need one again." He looked at her, the moonlight catching her silver pendant. "You realize you've become a legend already." She smiled softly. "So have you." He laughed quietly. "I preferred being feared." "You still are," she teased. "Just by anyone foolish enough to harm what you love." Rian grew thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder what comes next?" "Yes," she said. "But for the first time, I'm not afraid to find out." They stood together side by side, as a soft breeze rose from the valley. Somewhere below, the first night birds called. Somewhere in the courtyard, children laughed in their sleep. Frosthold breathed, lived, endured. Rian turned to her one last time that night. Whatever comes, Ash, remember this. There's no silence left that can take you from me. She reached for his hand, their fingers locking like the final link of a chain turned into gold. There's no cage left to hold us, she said. The moon climbed higher, bright and full, shining on the fortress that had been both prison and promise, and now stood as proof that even from ashes, something fierce and whole could rise again. And somewhere, beyond the walls and the whispering forests, the wind carried their names together. Rian and Ash. Frost and Flame. Frosthold stands in peace, for now. But in the shadows beyond the mountains, something stirs. Another voice, another fate calling to be heard. If you've walked this far with the pack, don't stop now. Smash that subscribe button, light up the notifications, and share this story with those who still believe in legends. The next moon is already rising, and when it does, a new fire will be born. Stay close to the flame, because the silence never truly ends.